And hear me out, because this is the kind of thing on the surface you'd be like, did Easton get this from Jared Stillman? Or like, is this a clickbait article? No, I'm serious. Welcome into the Hot Read Podcast. I'm your host, Easton Freeze, Director of Published Content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network. I'm joined, as always, on a Monday morning by producer JT. JT, how are you? How was your weekend?
I'm good. I'm hanging in there, much like all of you Titans fans this week.
How dare you assume that these Titans fans are hanging in there? I saw many of them unraveling, coming apart at the seams the past 2 days.
Yeah, I'm hanging in there, especially little fact about me, I hate the Eagles. I hate the Eagles team. I hate the fan base. I hate everything about them. So when I'm covering something that has to do with the Eagles, it's always tough when they get their way. But some good news, if you're a long-time listener of this show, I'll have you know that maybe last week you heard me say a take about Costco. That might be changing in the near future.
Take, right?
Yes, because my mother, who listens to the show, shout out mom, hi, texted me and said, "Hey, I'm sending you my Costco card." So I will be making a trip to Costco very soon. So
I need you to tell me when, and I want to see if I can go with you.
We'll do a little spot on
We might have to like vlog it or do like a live. Maybe we can interview somebody handing out free food at lunchtime. As part of
we can make a whole mini episode out of it.
Something that nobody asked for besides you and I, and that's what this show. We like to keep the show very insular and niche and not relevant at all to you on the outside. But no, that's great news to hear. Not a whole lot of great news in the way of the Titans this week, of course. I know, just an aside before we get into the meat and potatoes of the episode, Titans fans, if you're listening to this, first of all, congratulations, because I know based on the numbers and also just based on knowing how fans operate, when a team of yours is not having the greatest of times like the Titans are right now, oftentimes the morning after or the week after, you are not exactly running to your podcasts and videos and TV shows to hear all of the discussion surrounding them, because you would rather just do anything else with your life and tune them out. So if you're here, congratulations. We appreciate you listening, even when the topic isn't positive, considering the Titans' 2-game losing streak that they are now on. We do have to talk about it because it is, in fact, JT, our jobs to talk about it. And there's a lot to talk about. No shortage of interesting topics to dive into. Just a recap, I suppose. The Titans weekend, they kind of entered full-blown nightmare mode. They're a running team that can't run. Their newfound passing game lost their catalyst in the first quarter of this game and may have lost him for the foreseeable future. Their elite pass rush is officially dead until they get some key guys healthy that we'll talk about in a bit. The secondary is banged up and not nearly physical enough to hold their own against any decent team. And, A.J. Brown had a massive, massive day today. Of course, we're recording Sunday night as usual. If you're listening Monday morning, he had a massive day yesterday, and I'm sure he's waking up today in a lot better of a mood than you are. Where to start with this team? Of course, it's a Monday, and we've got winners and losers for today's show. The article, if you're listening to this first thing Monday morning, you might have noticed it's not out yet. I've had a bit of a nightmare day today, JT, not just in watching football and having my worst betting day of the year and also losing in fantasy, and also the team that I cover losing and having to deal with the nightmare that is fans wanting to lose their mind and sell the team. I also had issues with Wi-Fi at my house that required 2 hours of my time today on customer support call and a very, very expensive purchase to get it to work again. And so things have just been kind of a nightmare for me today all around. Been a very bad day. I also have had a cough for like a month now. If any of you, I feel in Googling this, because that's of course where you go when you are sick. You go to Google so that it can tell you that you have cancer and you're going to die. I went to Google, and it sounds like this is kind of a relatively common thing right now. People are getting these nagging coughs that just don't seem to go away, these mystery illnesses. If you are experiencing this like I am, please hit us up via Twitter. I want to hear if maybe I'm just dying and it's just a me thing, or maybe it's a thing going around. I'm curious. But yeah, I've had this nagging cough that I'm currently I juiced myself with as much cough medicine as I could before we started the show, so that hopefully you don't have a ton of jump cuts to make in today's show, cutting out all of my hacking and coughing and wheezing. So, needless to say, a horrible day for your boy. But we're here. We persevere nonetheless. We move. And the article will be written tomorrow, Monday morning, or I guess today when you're listening. It's hard to keep track of time because I'm talking to you in the future. It will be up some point today on Monday on RubberSportsMedia.com, and it will be more in-depth than today's episode of the pod because instead of going based off the article that I've already written, I'm going based off of the notes that I have and just the general thoughts from the game. So the good news, I guess, for you as fans is you don't want to listen to our typical hour to hour and 15 minutes of discussion surrounding this team that probably just makes your stomach turn and face turn white or maybe red with rage and anger. We're only going to probably do about 30 minutes today. We'll have plenty more to talk about on Friday, of course, and so we'll go from there. Today, with winners and losers, I do have the winners and losers picked out. The first loser, JT, could you give it to us, please?
Yeah, so let's get right into this winners and losers, where there are a lot more losers than winners, of course, in this game. But the number one loser of this game has to be the Titans in the trenches.
Yeah, and this was one of our main losers last week as well. It's been 2 straight weeks of the Titans, just top to bottom, being the less physical team. And ultimately, when a team like the Titans, their entire identity revolves around their physicality, when you are the less physical team on any given Sunday, you are probably going to lose that game. And that's what has happened for the Titans 2 weeks in a row now. This Titans team, it's really simple. There's a lot of problems with it, and we're going to get into them in detail. But the main problem, and I think it's really this simple, JT, the Titans are just going to continue to get punked each and every week. They're going to continue to lose when they get just destroyed in the trenches on both sides of the ball. I mean, they've been punked on the offensive line and the defensive line 2 weeks in a row now, pushed around, shoved. Their opponent has dictated the terms in the trenches for 2 straight weeks, and it's been 2 straight losses. One of them a close one against a team at home they probably could have beaten, and then just a torrent of disasters on the road in Philadelphia where they get humiliated. And it's kind of JT, I was thinking about this during today's game. It feels eerily similar to the way they started the season, where they have a very close down to the wire loss last week, and then they get annihilated on the road against what is perceived to be one of the best teams in the NFL. The Giants Bills start to their season going 0-2 feels eerily similar to the Bengals at home and then Eagles on the road that they've experienced the last 2 weeks. I don't know what this tells us about this team besides the fact that as constituted, they are the NFL middle class right now. JT, would you agree with that? I think unless entirely healthy and with their coaching staff on their A game, this team is a member of the middle class in the NFL. So that is to say, as we get into this conversation, of course, the fan reaction on any day like this, when there's a horrible loss and things are trending very much in the wrong direction for their team, is going to be overreact. We suck. We stink. It's all with a grain of salt, though, right? Because the expectations for Titans fans over the past 4 or 5 years, really since Mike Vrabel has been the coach of this team, have been elevated dramatically. They don't actually suck. This is they are in the top half of the NFL in terms of talent. However, there may be no worse place to be, JT, in the NFL than the purgatory of the 9th to 15th best team in the league. Do you agree with that?
No, I agree. You can really just look at it. I mean, they're beating the teams that they should, and they're losing against teams that are clear cut and dry better than them. If you look at it, they're 1-5 now against teams that are over 500, with their only win coming against the Washington Commanders, led by Carson Wentz, who
at the time were not a winning
winning team, and kind of have turned it around. It kind of just looks simple. They're going to continue to be average because they are just kind of top heavy in that aspect. They have a lot of key players, but also they just don't have the depth or that special playmaker ability on the offensive side, especially through the air right now, that really makes them one of the top elite teams.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that top heaviness in a couple of minutes, but the thing for me, and I agree mostly with your sentiment there. The only thing that I would disagree with is the idea that they are losing. Well, that's not. They are losing to the teams they're less talented than. I suppose my point is, under Mike Vrabel, we've grown accustomed to this team consistently punching above their perceived weight class. On paper, they, for years, have been beating teams that they weren't supposed to beat. You think back to last year when they went on the run of beating the Colts, who they should have beaten, and then the Rams, and then the Chiefs, and then I forget the fourth team, but it was 4 winning teams in a row, a stretch that was considered to be the most difficult stretch of their season last year, that they were thinking, the perception of media was, okay, if they can go 2-2 through here, they're going to be in good shape. And they ended up going 4-0. That had been the Titans' way. They constantly prove people wrong in the media and fans alike by punching above their weight class, right? And on paper, that's been the case for them for years. This year, really, the only change is when they're playing teams that are as good or better than them on paper, they're sometimes in close fashion, like in the Bengals game and in the Chiefs game, both games that they arguably should have won. And then sometimes in blowouts, like in the Bills and the Eagles games, they're not getting it done. They're not sealing the deal against those teams and finishing the job when they try to punch above their weight class. And so that's really the big difference for me in the trenches. And I don't want to talk too much about specifics because that's some of the losers we're going to get to in a couple of minutes, but really it's a matter of any team in the league. If you can't be competent at the very least on the offensive line and on the defensive line, you're going to go nowhere. You may win enough games to get into the playoffs, which the Titans, again, still absolutely are getting into the playoffs. That's not in question. It's not going to be in question. It's not been in question for a couple weeks now. But at this point, everyone, I think, in Titans media and in the fan base has their eyes turned towards the playoffs. And a lot of people, I think, have had their eyes turned towards the playoffs for this team ever since the ending of their season last year, in which a lot of fans came to the conclusion internally that I no longer care about what this team does in the regular season. I care about them getting to the playoffs, preferably winning the division and getting a home game. But beyond that, not really caring about the position that they're in, because we saw last year that getting a 1 seed and home field advantage and a bye doesn't necessarily mean jack squat in the NFL. You have to come to play each and every week. And sometimes teams can, I think, arguably a break like the bye in the playoffs could be as detrimental to a team as it can be helpful, just depending on the composition and the makeup of your guys. I don't see this fan base really caring what this team does in the regular season beyond getting to the playoffs, preferably being awarded a home game, and then from there, doing something, showing up. Ryan Tannehill showing up, the team having a game plan that's competitive and being able to compete. And frankly, right now, this team, I think at the very best, JT, and that is to say, I don't necessarily agree with this, but I think the best argument you can make that today, right now, in injuries and players coming back and development over the next month can change this. But right now, the Titans are at best the 5th best team in the AFC, even though they're going to be one of the 4 teams to get that home field advantage and win their division. They are absolutely not better right now than the Bills, the Chiefs, the Bengals, and the Dolphins. They're kind of in that class with, I think, the Ravens and maybe a little bit of the Patriots, maybe the Browns if Deshaun Watson starts to pan out. Are there any other teams in that middle class, that the Jets perhaps? Like, that's kind of where they are right now. And that's not to say, you know what, I'll get into this a little bit later in the episode, so I'll save my thoughts. JT, let's go ahead and get to the next winner. We've spent too much time on this one.
Yeah, so let's get into a winner here finally, and it's not coming from this game. The winners and losers today are a little bit cheeky. We're kind of tiptoeing the line here, but of course, one of the winners of looking at this game today is just being a team in the AFC South.
Guys, what do you want me to do? I have to pick 3 winners and 3 losers at least each and every week. And after a game like this, there is no more difficult challenge than trying to come up with 3 winners. So I'll be honest, the 3 winners I have today, 2 of them are kind of cheating, and one of them is real. And the one that's real we'll get to last. And it's not even much of a moral victory. It's just like a hooray, that guy played well in this game and it didn't matter. So this winner being in the AFC South is what I think Titans fans who are particularly destitute. Goodness, it's getting late already. Destitute and upset this morning should be focused on. And I've said this for a couple weeks now. The Titans are in the AFC South, and that affords them the unique privilege in the league, in the AFC in particular, to really not have to worry about how they finish down the stretch. Now, if they had been better against some of these good teams in the AFC that they've played so far, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Bengals, they would still matter to some extent in terms of seeding. But at this point, with the Titans at 7-5, I believe right now in the 4th spot in the playoff race, because the Ravens are in the 3rd with the 8th, and the Chiefs and the Chiefs and the Bills both have at least 9 wins. I know that for a fact. This team, I think at this point, is almost certainly locked into the 4th spot in the playoffs, which, it's the lowest possible bar for if you're going to win the division. But the good news is the next month, win or lose or draw, things don't matter all that much. And here's my take, JT, and this will be the bit of the show that I think will absolutely be clipping and putting out on social media, because this is my primary take as I let this game marinate over the past 5 or 6 hours since the game ended. Here's what I think the Titans need to do. And hear me out, because this is the kind of thing on the surface you'd be like, did Easton get this from Jared Stillman? Or like, is this a clickbait article? No, I'm serious about this. And if you know me and follow my work, you know that very rarely do I say these kinds of things. And oftentimes it's me laughing at others who say them and as reactionary and stupid. I think from a pure strategy perspective, depending on what happens, both in the game that's currently going on, the Colts and the Cowboys right now on Sunday Night Football, which we don't know the result of, but more importantly, how the Titans and Jaguars game goes a week from today, next Sunday at Nissan Stadium, I think the Titans need to consider essentially shutting it down for a number of their key players. And here's the point. If the Titans win against the Jaguars next week and the Colts don't find some renaissance, don't manage to beat the Cowboys in the game that's currently going on, manage to win next week against their opponent, who I don't know off the top of my head, assuming the Colts are dead in the division, the Titans hold the 2-game tiebreaker over them. They've won both games, so they don't even have to have a better record than the Colts. They just can't have a worse record than the Colts. The Jaguars, however, they've not played yet, and so this first game will be really telling in terms of whether the Jaguars still have life. If the Jaguars win next Sunday, beat the Titans at home, they will be, I believe, 2 games back in the division with 3 or 4 games to play. No, with 4 games to play, and they'll still have the Titans at home on the schedule. So really, they just need to do 1 game better than the Titans over those 3 penultimate games down the stretch before they host the Titans at home, because if the Titans go into Jacksonville in week 18, leading by just 1 game in the division, and the Jaguars win that game, they would then have tied records, and the Jaguars would have swept the division and somehow miraculously taken the division seat and gotten into the playoffs. And the Titans almost certainly would not be in it. I don't think anybody's expecting any AFC team, any AFC South team besides the winner of the division to sneak into the playoffs. So assuming they get it done next week against Jacksonville, and I think that they will, they would then be 4 games up in the division. They would have 4 games to play, so they wouldn't have their magic number quite yet, but they'd need just 1 combination of either a Titans win in those final 4 games, which 2 of those games are Jacksonville and Houston, and then as well as the Chargers and the Cowboys, and or 1 loss by the Jaguars. If that is the case, and they're up 4 games with 4 to play, I think it behooves this team to take advantage of their unique opportunity in which they find themselves in the AFC South, where they can get away with this. They need to rest anybody and everybody who is banged up and is vital to this team's chances in the playoffs. Now, you may, as a fan, you may have already punted on this year. You may have already punted on their playoff chances. That's your business. Fine. This team, obviously, if you know Mike Vrabel at all, you know that's not what he's interested in, and you know that's not what these players are interested in. They said as much in their post-game availability today that this season is not over. Jeffrey Simmons made that eminently clear, that they have not given up on the season. Ryan Tannehill at the podium said, I have no reason to believe that this team can't get things turned around and go win it all. Now, whether you believe them or not, that's up to you. But that's how they feel. And if they feel that way and they're focused singularly on their chances in these playoffs, they need to take advantage of their position by getting anybody who is vital to their performance as a team healthy for the stretch run. because if they are 4 up in the division with 4 to play, they really have no more meaningful games remaining on the regular season schedule, except possibly week 17 or week 18, rather, their 17th game in Jacksonville. That's the only remaining game that might matter to them if they win next Sunday. And if that's the case, guys like Jeffrey Simmons, who's been playing on one leg now for 4 or 5 weeks in a row, guys like Danico Autry, who's currently out and who knows how long, if at all, he's going to return. Guys like Treylon Burks, who we'll talk about in a moment, who is banged up now, and we don't know when he's going to be back from concussion protocol, which is extremely disappointing considering the trajectory he was on. Guys like even Ryan Tannehill, who's been dealing with ankle issues for a month or so now. Those guys who are vital to this team's performance and have to be healthy and available for their chances in the playoffs, they've got to get them healthy. And I think that they have a unique opportunity to do so if they beat Jacksonville next week. So that's my take. And I'll talk more about this next episode on Friday. And we'll talk more about it, especially if the Titans win next weekend in Jacksonville. So not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I think that's where the Titans' heads need to be at this point. Because, and I don't say this just, it wasn't a random thought that popped in my mind that I wanted to get off my chest or a hot take to get clicks. It's a result of the fact that we saw in this game, these Titans cannot contend with the best in the NFL if they are not healthy at key positions and if their coaching staff is not on their A game. There are a couple of key players, Danico Autry, Jeffrey Simmons, Christian Fulton in the secondary, Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry in the offensive line. There's a couple of key places on this team that if they are not serviceable, this team cannot operate, and they're dead in the water. They're a boat that is dead in the water. They've lost power. And so because this team is constructed in a way that's not very versatile, they're not able to do a lot of different things well. They do what they do well. And if you can keep them from doing what they do, whether that's a better game plan than them, being more physical than them, or just by luck of them not having key guys at those positions, they're dead. This team has to prioritize that. So that, in a roundabout way, was our winner for being in the AFC South. Congratulations, Titans. You have a unique position in the AFC South. You would be fools not to use it.
Let's go to another loser here on this game, and it's one that we just keep talking about every single week. It's the health of this Titans team.
Yeah, so kind of what we were talking about, segueing to the health situation. I tweeted out on I forget what day it was. It was either Thursday. I think it was after Friday's injury report when we found the final injury status of the Titans on the injury report. And we saw that they only had a couple of guys out. Consequential guys weren't really off the platter for this game besides Danico Autry. I tweeted out that, all things considered, this Titans team is in pretty good shape health-wise right now, by their standards at least, considering how banged up they've been for 2 straight years now. They were in pretty good shape. Well, after 2 quarters of football on Sunday, they were already down Treylon Burks, Christian Fulton, and David Long Jr., who are relatively important to this team if you know anything about the Titans. So I guess never mind on that. They're not in good shape anymore, and one game can do that to you. There were a number of things that went wrong in this game. Watching the game, JT, did you feel the same way that I did when Treylon Burks makes that? First of all, I don't know how he held onto that ball. Miraculous catch. From what I heard, I believe it was Paul Kaharski tweeted out during that moment in the game that it looked as if, from his perspective in the stadium, Treylon Burks may have lost consciousness for a moment. Like he held the ball for a while and then it just rolled away after which he was, walking off the field and then walked inside to the locker room and immediately put into concussion protocol. But that was the moment in the game where it felt like this might become a disaster very quickly.
No, for sure. I mean, he is your bona fide number one weapon through the passing game. After him, there is no depth to really be seen, except one guy that we're going to talk about a little bit later who started to show some flashes of what he can really do. But I mean, you kind of you can look down the stat sheet after this. When you have guys like CJ Board, Jeff Swaim, and just those 2 names alone getting meaningful catches and meaningful looks on an offense after your number one guy goes down, you're going to have a problem. And
the Titans already came into this game with just 4 active receivers. They had lost their stud wide receiver Cody Hollister during the week in practice, and they only came in with guys like Racey McMath and Kyle Phillips on IR. They came in with just 4 guys. They lost 25% of that wide receiver room just in terms of body mass when they lost Treylon Burks. And then you had, like you said, you had CJ Board playing almost every snap from there on out. It was a disaster.
It's really tough. I mean, we'll probably talk about this through the week, but especially it's kind of scary if you want to outlook for the game next week and ahead. The Titans have played very, very cautious with when it comes to concussions. You can look at Ben Jones. So it'll be really interesting to see when we get Treylon Burks back and if he's back in the next game or two.
That's right. I mean, with Burks, he's significantly younger than Ben Jones is, so he will be likely more resilient. I found anecdotally, of course, but anecdotally, it feels like to me the younger players in concussion protocol come back earlier than the older guys, and that's, I think, just a matter of nature. But that is to say, this team, like you said, is very cautious with these things. And we went from me speaking directly to Ben Jones in the locker room in the last game he played before going on concussion protocol and knowing nothing about a potential concussion or noticing anything wrong with him, to then missing 2 weeks of football because he was in the protocol and couldn't play. So you never know. I mean, it wouldn't shock me, frankly, if Treylon Burks missed like 2 or 3 games from this. I don't know. But that is a big loss for them, as well as, you know, Christian Fulton, just his hamstrings, he can't stay healthy. And it's a disaster for the Titans because outside of him, Trey Avery's been nice, but he's an undrafted free agent rookie. He's not going to be a guy that you can play in a main outside cornerback role reliably. And we saw that a little bit today. He got cooked quite a bit. You saw Roger McCreary has had a really nice rookie cornerback season, but rookie cornerback season comes with a massive, massive asterisk because rookie cornerbacks typically, unless you're Sauce Gardner, you are not very good at football yet at the NFL level. And he has each and every week, it feels like to me, shown more and more of his rookie stripes. I think teams are finding better ways to target and pick on him. And part of that's due to his size, and part of that is due to his just inexperience in the NFL. So their situation in the secondary when they lose Christian Fulton or have Christian Fulton in a reduced capacity because of his injuries becomes a problem very quickly. It also doesn't help when Elijah Molden is out as well. He played 1 game last week before getting hurt again. So it's a disaster all around. This Titans team, like I said in the previous topic, they have to get healthy. By the way, Tannehill seemed to tweak his other ankle today. We, of course, assumed told you I had a cough. We assumed that he had been dealing with that same ankle and was just continuing to tweak it every week in the game. And you saw him grimace after getting up and kind of hobble off the field at one point. This wasn't the same ankle. Apparently, it was being reported that he was getting medical treatment on his other ankle. So that's not good. He may have 2 bum ankles now. We'll have to see. It looked like his ankle was actually feeling better in this game based on how he's running the ball early on. And then things went downhill from there. So top to bottom, a disaster day for the Titans on the injury front. And that is a big loser, is the Titans' health. Now, we're going to take a quick break from winners and losers and get to some Titans news with producer JT. Before we do, I'm going to kind of lump a number of our selling points into one here for you. First of all, if you are just listening to us via podcast, thank you. However, there is a YouTube version of the show. We have a video show. You can see our beautiful faces right here in video form with cool graphics and backgrounds and whatnot. And you can also see any of our video elements of the show that are enhanced by what really you can only experiencing them if you watch the show, such as tape with James Foster on Fridays and videos from press conferences that we play regularly. And we often put some images up on the screen. We do Best Bet Gauntlet graphics from time to time. So there's a lot that you're missing out if you're just listening. Go over to Broadway Sports Media on YouTube and you can watch the show there each and every week. Also, if you are a business owner or employed by a business who you think would be a great fit in the Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, Nashville area, who would be interested in potentially talking to us about advertisement opportunities on the show, as well as on the rest of our Broadway Sports Media podcast network, as well as on BroadwaySportsMedia.com, we have got plenty of opportunities for you to advertise really at any price point with us. We've got thousands of eyeballs and ears on our content each and every week and hundreds of thousands on social media. So please reach out to us via our emails, which you can find on BroadwaySportsMedia.com, or our social media, where you can find wherever you are on social media. So we appreciate that. Now, JT, let's get into some Titans news.
Let's jump into some news here on this Monday morning. Let's start with one thing that it's kind of hard to make of what this really means right now. And we're going to go into kind of more detail here on the show with some more winners and losers. But Mike Vrabel had a quote after the game today from Buck Rising, in which he said, "I think we're at a crossroads with how we want to move forward with this season." Certainly a little interesting quote from the head coach of a currently first place team in a division. Easton, what are your thoughts on that? And I know we're going to go into more of it, but what do you see coming of what he is saying there?
I mean, it sounds like this team is going to make some much needed adjustments. That may ultimately, it may just be a rallying cry from the coach to the team and the coaches. And if that's the case, then great. It's a good one. But I kind of feel like it's going to, it's a bit of a precursor to some maybe significant changes we see over the coming days or weeks. You know, there are certain guys at certain positions that may have to really earn their spot each and every week in practice, potentially on the offensive line, you know, potentially changing responsibilities from the coaching staff. I think ultimately what he means is, as a team, they have to decide what they want the season to be and what they believe this season can be, and they have to go from there. So majority of my thoughts on that are that this team is needing a nudge in the right direction from their head coach, and he's trying to provide that. But I also think that it could absolutely be a precursor to some big changes, both in personnel and maybe in some coaching responsibilities.
Let's move on to some more just NFL-esque type news today. And with, of course, the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Shiesty once again proving that they're Patty Mahomes'
How about
daddy.
that? Making me eat my words and my money. That's good for them, man.
They have the Chiefs number. Balled out today, especially. They started to look they looked a lot like the Bengals of old. They were feisty. They were out there playing a little dirty today, kind of showing a lot of emotion. There was a couple of unsportsmanlike calls on Jamar Chase and that wide receiver group against the secondary. But with that win today,
it's like the old Vontaze Burfict Bengals out there.
It probably had to do with Juju
medicine balls across the middle.
Right?
Yeah, that's probably right.
But with the Bengals winning today, that puts the Bills all the way up to the first seed in the AFC.
Bills are the biggest winners on the day. They went from 5th seed in the AFC in the wild card spot to number 1 seed overall, and they didn't even play a game.
Didn't even have to play. So props to you if any of you out there support or backing the Bills.
Yeah,
but with that, we move on to the other side of it. Of course, the Eagles are staying in that top position, and the Seahawks finally get into the playoff picture after making some noise. But there's a little bit more change on the way here for them in their future. Of course, if you watched the Miami 49ers game today, you would have saw that Jimmy G had a fracture in his foot that will require season-ending surgery. So that means they are down to a UDFA of quarterback. I can't remember exactly what his name was. Do you remember who it was?
Gosh, no. You keep talking, I'll pull it up.
But I mean, this is kind of leaves it open here for the Seattle Seahawks, who at the beginning of the season looked like they were tanking for CJ Stroud or Bryce Young.
I mean, on paper they were. On paper they sold the franchise.
They are looking to be a contender in this middling NFC West.
How could we forget Brock Purdy? Brock Purdy, number 14, quarterback, undrafted free agent rookie for the Niners. I mean, he played well enough, but he also is playing in the most QB-friendly scheme in the world under Kyle Shanahan. He ended up having 25 for 37, 210 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. Not bad.
Not a bad
debut at all, no.
Also, considering he does have a lot of weapons around him in CMC, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, could keep going on and on, but that certainly helps.
Yeah, no, it certainly does. But good for the Seahawks, man. Is there any fan base in the league who has a better outlook right now than the Seahawks do? The fact that they, on paper to begin the year, were selling the team. They were tanking for one of the best quarterbacks in next year's draft. They were toast to begin the year. Nobody expected anything from them. And now they're looking like they're going to win the division, getting to the playoffs, and also still get one of the top, maybe even 2 picks in the draft, because the team they sold their players to and got picks in return from, the Broncos, continue to be a flaming dumpster fire flowing down a river of lava into a volcano where they should explode and be blasted into the sun, never to be seen again. It's a nightmare in Denver. They lost today like 3-9 or 9 to 10.
10-9 on
10,
every like 2-minute drill, like basically Tyler Huntley just basically did QB sneaks all the way up the field, and they finally scored.
It'd be one thing if they lost to the Ravens. We expected them to lose to the Ravens. But they lost to the Ravens without Lamar Jackson, who left the game in the first quarter at something very, very early on. The whole game was against the Lamar Jackson-less Ravens. So disaster for Denver, but great for the Seahawks. Good for y'all.
Yeah, and I would challenge your notion of the best outlook of a franchise with the Seattle. The only other one I could really think of is the Detroit Lions, who are finally getting into that playoff contention-esque area right now with their win over the Jacksonville
JT, you and I
Jaguars.
both bet the Lions over win total for the year, which I think was 6. Is that right? It
was 6. So we are 1 away from tying. We need 2 more to win, and they got a pretty nice schedule over the next couple of weeks.
You have it pulled up?
I do not. Let me pull it up real quick.
Pull it up real quick. But the key to this take by you, which is fair, is who owns the picks that they now have, right? They have the Rams picks, who continue to be a disaster. And as much as they, looked all right today against the Seahawks and won me the only bet in our best bet gauntlet, they lost, and they're now like 3-9, I believe. So, they're going to be one of the top 10, maybe even top 5 picks in the draft, which the Lions will receive. So,
yeah. So their schedule. So next week they play the Vikings at home. So interesting game. Could probably go either way with how the Vikings are playing right now. Honestly, some very high profile offenses there. Then they go on the road to the Jets. Could be a win right there. Then they go on the road again, play the Panthers. That looks pretty much could be
very tasty. Very tasty.
Then they play the Bears at home and go on the road for the Packers. So they only need 2, and those Panthers-Bears games look pretty nice for that.
They do.
And if they could string 3 or 4 here, we could see the Lions sneak into that 7 spot.
We could. So good for them.
And then one final note on the NFL playoff picture. We're going to do, from now on, we're going to do a little moment of silence for the teams that have been eliminated from playoff contention, including...
We got our first 2 today, right?
We got our first 2 today, including one of our AFC South brethren here in the Houston Texans, who are 1-10-1 and eliminated, and then
mathematically eliminated.
The Chicago Bears, who are 3-10 as well, also eliminated. So we will take a moment of silence for them. Okay.
Better luck next season, guys. That's right. Better luck next season.
One more thing we'll talk about here is, almost forgot to talk about it because we both really shouldn't be talking about it.
I wish we didn't have to, but we do.
I didn't have to, but we do. Currently, as it stands right now, Easton went 1-4 on the day.
Worst week of the year. It's the first 1-4 of the year. So frankly, it took what, 13 weeks for me to have a 1-4 or worse day. I should be thankful. It's you're bound to have one eventually. So it's all right.
So your record now moves to 33-29-3, still making money.
Right.
However, I am on the same boat as you, currently going 0-4 on the day.
You're 0-4. Who are you pending?
I'm pending the Saints
tomorrow? All right, so we're pulling hard for the
4.5. We're pulling hard. Brings my total right now to 28-31-5. Don't really want to talk about it. Also had one of my worst days of the year so far, and that's going to do it for our news segment.
All right, that is JT with the news. Now, for our final 3 winners and losers, but before we get to that, we mentioned on Friday's show, JT, that we may hold the show hostage from our listeners if they don't rate and or review the show. And luckily, somebody came through, one brave soul who I will shout out here. The only username they left was Belly Laughs. So you know who you are if you're listening. We appreciate you leaving a review. Said, entertaining Titans news or analysis. Hey, guys, still enjoying the show. I love that, still enjoying the show. Like I'm glad that the fact that eventually they were going to stop enjoying it. I'm glad that we haven't run out of our magic yet. Glad the wedding went well, Easton. Thank you very much. Congrats on your team winning against the Titans, JT, and winning today. I'm trying not to hold it against you. With this second effort, you now have more ratings and reviews from me than railroad workers get paid sick days per year. Both parties exploit the worker. Hashtag America. Yeah, that's a great review. And we appreciate you leaving, it sounds like 2 reviews on the show, outdoing the majority of our listeners. We know that there are literally hundreds of you that haven't left a review, and it takes literally 10 seconds. Please go do it. We will shout you out on the show. Leave your Twitter handle. We will follow you and send all of the rest of our hundreds of listeners to go and follow you on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or wherever. It takes 10 seconds. Go. If you don't know how, you go to the show on Apple Podcasts. We're going to show the people because I think people need to know. You go to the show on Apple Podcasts. You scroll down. And then right here, you're going to find the ratings and reviews. See those 5 stars right there? You just click the 5th one to do 5, and then you write in the little box whatever you want to say, and then it comes to us, and then we read it on the show. It's awesome, and it takes 0 time at all. The time it takes you to click into your phone and click on the podcast and listen is more than it would take you to leave a review. So leave a review. If you don't, we might have to hold the show hostage until people do leave reviews. So please do that. We appreciate you very much for listening and doing that for us. All right, JT, our final 3 losers and winners. We've got two winners here technically, but they're not quite winners, and 1 loser. What's our first winner?
Yeah, so our first winner here is going to be someone who isn't even on the Titans at all. And when I say his name, it's going to be pretty obvious why he's a winner today. It's got to be A.J. Brown.
Yeah, A.J. Brown, big day for him. He obviously, he said as much after the game that he had this game circled all year long. And of course, why wouldn't he? He had 10 targets, 8 receptions, 119 yards, leading the team in all 3 of those categories, 14.9 yards per reception. His long was 40 yards in the day. Oh, and he had 2 touchdowns. Yeah, so we mentioned he had a huge day. He had a monster day. I had to have to check the rest of his season, but that's got to be one of his best performances of the year. He was fantastic, and frankly, he exposed what we've known about this Titans secondary for a couple of weeks now. They are not physical enough. They're too small to handle the most physical receivers in the league, and as a result of that, whenever the Titans pass rush isn't getting home, which recently they've been fully MIA, this team is not good enough at cornerback to contend with these best receivers in the league. So I don't have a whole lot to say besides the fact that a big conversation in Titans news and media this week is going to be surrounding how the Titans organization needs to be held to account for what has been a year-long discussion, but was kind of crystallized in this game. Now, I don't think it was fair entirely to use this game as that cornerstone piece of evaluation in this discussion as to whether or not the Titans should or shouldn't have made the trade, should or shouldn't have paid A.J. Brown, whether or not that was even an option. He wanted to be here. Spoiler, he didn't, even though he continues to lie and say that he did. This team would have, I think, been in better shape if Treylon Burks had gotten to finish the game. They probably still would have lost. Almost certainly would still have lost. But I think based on his 1 or 2 drives that he played and the stats he put up, he had just that 1 catch, but for 25 yards for a touchdown, and it was a phenomenal catch. I think that he would have had a pretty nice day as well, and things would have looked better for this team. But right now, they're in bad shape. Jon Robinson's going to take a lot of heat this week on the internet, and frankly, he should. This fan base should be kind of on him for the number of things that are wrong with this Titans roster right now, the deficiencies that they have that are a direct result in a number of ways of his mismanagement of this team, his misses on high draft picks, his poor allocation of funds to certain players, his misses on free agents, his misses on trades. It's, again, not been all bad by any means. And I think that he is at worst, frankly, a middle of the road NFL GM, but he's had a number of key mistakes that have aggregated into what is right now a disaster for the Titans.
Let's move on to our final loser of this Titans-Eagles game. It's one we kind of alluded to a little bit. It's being a top-heavy team.
Right. So I tweeted this out a couple of hours ago. I understand, and oftentimes I agree. If you listen to the show, you know this. With so many of the complaints that Titans fans and media have with the coaching of this offense, the offensive coaching staff for this team, we know has issues and is very limited. And Todd Downing being the figurehead of that group is the perfect example of why there's a lot to take issue with when it comes to the offensive coaching of the Titans. However, this team has gone now the majority of 2 seasons in a row with a non-viable available wide receiver core and a bottom 10 offensive line in the NFL. So how I can't help but acknowledge that fact that for 2 years, most every Sunday, they have had a group of receivers that aren't viable in the NFL to have a decent passing game and a pass protecting group in their offensive line that is a bottom 10, bottom 5, at times the worst in the league. I can't look at that fact and acknowledge that and then point fingers at the offensive coaching staff and say it's all your fault. I don't know how that can't be the primary issue in the majority of people's minds with this team. And I got a reply from at Benji_P16 to that tweet, Bob Burks Stan. He said, definitely the primary issue, which we agree on, but he said there's nothing to be done at this point to change the personnel that the team has. But with a bad offensive coordinator, you can fire him at any point and see immediate results, whether good or bad. And my response is simply that I don't think with this toolbox that this Titans team has available to whoever is manning the controls at the offensive coordinator position, I'm feeling more and more strongly that the immediate results that people think you would see if they were to replace the offensive coordinator are just wishful thinking. You look at elements of this team like the pass rush. When you are missing Danico Autry and you've got Jeffrey Simmons playing on one leg, missing 1.5 guys like that is enough to take an elite top 5 pass rushing unit in the NFL from the top of the hill to non-existent for an entire month. That is being too top heavy. This team is too reliant on those star players. They don't have the depth necessary. When you see the Titans offense go from alive and well with Treylon Burks to dead in the water for 3/4 of football without him, that is a team that is too top heavy. When you see a team that, has an elite running back who we've seen this season do some really phenomenal things, but their offensive line can't block for him. And so he's being hit behind the line of scrimmage at a rate higher than any other running back in the league. He's getting more yards after contact than any running back in the league. All of these stats that are signs of the fact that this guy's still got it, but he's not being blocked for at all. That is a team that is too top heavy. This team has to get more depth, and they've got to get guys that can fill in at these key roles. And this is a big part, right, of my take on why the Titans should potentially consider resting some guys down the final stretch here. There are some guys that this team cannot be, they can't be competitive at all without. And in the pass rush, I mean, the secondary is that way. Like Bob Burks Stan on Twitter said, there's not a whole lot you can do. The personnel is the personnel. They need Molden to get healthy. They need McCreary to continue to improve, and they need Christian Fulton to get back and healthy. But outside of those things happening, you can't change the personnel. The pass rush has to be good enough to carry the secondary when they're not at full strength. And right now they're nowhere near that.
And then our final winner of this winner and loser segment of this episode today, it's going to be the first Titans player we've basically talked about all day today, besides the ones who have gotten hurt. And it's a guy who we've been calling his name for 6 weeks now. And I got to give him a round of applause here on this show because he finally showed some life today. And that has to be our boy, Chigoziem Okonkwo.
Yeah, Chig, big Chig day. And he led the team in targets and receptions, 5 targets, 4 receptions, 68 yards, a long of 41 and an average of 17 yards per reception. That, in the cynical fashion, the Titans, after weeks and weeks of saying they're going to get Chig the ball more, we're going to get Chig the ball more, we're going to improve his role, increase his role in the passing game. They finally get him a season high 4 receptions on 5 targets. Which is still not enough, in my opinion. However, they are trending in the right way, and Chig continues to be one of, if not the most electric, dynamic playmaker on the field for the Titans on offense. So not a whole lot to say besides the fact that they need to continue to throw the ball to him. I mean, today it was their top 2 tight ends were their primary receivers. Chig and Austin Hooper led the team both in targets and in receptions. They both had 5 targets. They had 3 and 4 receptions. They both led the team in receiving yards outside of Treylon Burks. Like that was the show for them today. And that's both an indictment of the Titans wide receiver core, as well as a reflection on how this duo at tight end is good. And they need to continue to increase their role in the passing game. So that's going to do it for today's show, I believe, JT. We went about 50 minutes, which when I say 30, you probably add 20 minutes onto that, and that's naturally how it goes. So we appreciate everybody listening to the show today. We will be back on Friday. We'll have a guest. We'll have James Foster and potentially somebody else. We'll see if things work out. But we'll have a lot to talk about then when the Titans look to end their 2-game skid and host the Jacksonville Jaguars at home in Nissan Stadium next week. Until then, I'm Easton Freeze for producer JT. This has been the Hot Read Podcast. I hope you have a much better week than the Titans did a game on Sunday. Be well.